Hello there, this is Sean Taylor for Blues in Britain as part of the How Musicians Work series, in which I get to interview some of the best artists around and talk about their craft and the magic that they create. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to find out more about these interviews. Today, I'm joined by a fantastic songwriter, a great singer, a great songwriter, a great guitar player, who has a fantastic new album called The Fatalist, which I've been listening to all weekend, and it's great. I absolutely love it. So please make welcome Mr. Buffalo Nichols. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
Very well. So what's been happening?
I've just been busy. I finished this record back in, I want to say December, January, and I've been on the road pretty much ever since, and about to get on another tour to promote the album. So busy, and life is happening in between all of that.
Good stuff. The record comes out on the 15th of September. Is this correct?
That's right.
And I'd like to just jump in straight off and talk about the album because I love it. It's just such a great mix of different things. It's just fantastic. It's one of these albums that you never know what's going to happen next when you're listening to it. I really love that.
Thank you.
And there's so many influences. Like there's obviously blues, but then there's kind of like trip hop, hip hop, electronica, bits of samples, different voices coming in. Could you talk a little bit about how you brought all that together?
Yeah, this album is me trying to put a lot of my influences into one package. I've been navigating the music world and figuring out, how genres work in terms of marketing and all these things. And I just wanted to see like what happens if I just put everything that I like into one album, and it's still labeled as the blues, whatever. But I think everybody understands the blues is the root of so much. So I think it's fair to start with the blues and just branch off. I spent years playing in bluegrass bands. I've always, loved making hip hop beats and sample music. I love electronic music. I love house and techno, all these things. So to me, they're not that dissimilar, all these styles. So this is just what's going on in my head.
It sounds great. It's such interest. It's so interesting hearing it. I've got my notes and I've just completely gone against them straight away. But it's fascinating because the first thing I heard of you was the Buffalo Nichols. That's your first record, right? The self-titled, and that's wonderful. Yeah. And it seems much more experimental, this one, than that one. It has the core of the voice and the vocals and the rootsy sound, but it's definitely more experimental. This one, would you say?
Yeah, experimental was the direction that I was going for. I really wanted to do something that was not just different, but something that was unique to me. Like, I feel like even though I'm proud of the last album, and there's a lot of my own like life and heart in the songwriting, and in the grand scheme, it's kind of an album that you could hear from other people, more or less. But this album, I feel like, I'm the only one who could have made this album.
I like the first one too. Don't sell yourself short. Yeah. It's wonderful, man. It's definitely you. It's really cool.
Oh, thank you.
I want to just jump into a few songs from the Fatalist record. The album opens with the Cold Black Stare, if I'm right, and it's fascinating this because you talk about a very important criticism and critique of capitalism, and I think the thunder in the background says a lot, which is I agree with it. Great. There's a great line here. If you had nothing, he would take that too. That's a wonderful lyric.
Yeah, that's another one. Like a lot of my like the first line for a song comes from conversations with my grandfather. There's the last album, Living Hell, started with a conversation with my grandfather. But my grandpa would come when I was growing up. He'd come visit us, and we lived in the area, like with poverty and all this stuff. And he would, even when I was a young kid, he would say, they just don't want you to have anything. If you had nothing, they would take that too.
Great line.
So yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, can't take credit for it. So,
so what, your grandfather? What was he? Was he a musician as well? Or?
No, he wasn't. He was a army veteran, government worker, but hardworking person. But he kind of is a part of the reason why I play the music that I do, because he had my mom listening to like hee haw and like country music and Chuck Berry and all that stuff. So big influence for me.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's good to hear, man. I was curious though, because it the idea of being able to write a really brilliant song, but then also being able to write a really brilliant political song that's coherent politically, I find that a really interesting and difficult task to achieve. And you do it, but could you talk about that? Because how do you make a kind of very profound, coherent political point whilst at the same time creating something artistically which is just very special? It's difficult, isn't it? It's a difficult job. Well,
It is
not.
difficult. No, I think it really is because I've written a lot of songs trying to make have a message, and it always just feels like awkward and like it doesn't work. I think the song has to come first, and so much of the music that I've listened to is political just by its nature, but not trying to be. Like I love The Clash, I love System of a Down, I love Public Enemy, and it's not like they're like, oh, we're gonna write a political song. It's just like that's just the kind of art that they
Mm.
make, and that's just the way that I have to approach it. It's like if it's not necessary, then I don't need to write it, and it often is necessary.
It's a great approach. Fascinating. Those three artists you picked out are very different. The Clash and Public Enemy. I mean, I guess it's rebel music and it's political protest, but they're also very different stylistically, and that shows in what you do. Have you always just been open to every kind of music? Or
Yeah, I've always, especially like anything that has a guitar in it, has been something that I've been interested in. But my early days, I was really into the subversive stuff. So it was a lot of punk and hip hop. So um, it wasn't it. That's why I was drawn to the early blues because that has more of a punk attitude than the later stuff.
and that's, I mean, going in from that song, the Cold Black Stare, into the Fatalist Blues, which another great line. If I had my way, I would tear this whole building down. And it's such a great track. This with again all the influences I've written down: blues, trip hop, hip hop, electronica. And how do you decide with songs what you're going to bring in, what part of the kind of what colors you can use like an artist? How do you decide? Does it just happen, or could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've been really lately, the last few years, focused on like the emotion of different sounds. So to me, if I feel like I'm writing a song that is kind of heavy or dark, then it's just like I want that dark atmosphere. I want that big heavy bass. It just goes along with it so
Yeah.
well. So it is just like the same way if a painter is going to paint a landscape, they don't have to know that the sky is blue. They just feel like these particular shades are going to work. There might be some purples and there might be some greens in it, but you just kind of you start with the idea like it's maybe supposed to look like this, but then once you feel the emotion, the sounds kind of just present themselves to you.
And have you always chosen that route very much? Is that, would you say that's quite an what word am I looking for? You deciding with each song a different path, or is there like a kind of set routine you have with working out a song? Is it just different each time, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's different every time, and it was a challenge to write these songs compared to other songs because I used to kind of rely on like songwriter techniques, like you can just title, verse, chorus, verse, all this stuff, and it kind of helps the process move along more quickly. But um, on the last album as well, but definitely on this album, I wasn't thinking about the structure of the song. I wasn't even thinking about the topic. I was just kind of letting it come out, and then I'd have to like look at what I have and piece it together. So it's a different process every time.
And it's developing with each record, as we can see. Um, I'd like to talk a little bit about another couple of tracks. "Love Is All" is wonderful. I think that's the first thing I heard of yours. It was beautiful, just you and a guitar. A really wonderful track, you know. But I was curious because it is a celebration of love. You talked about choosing spiritual love over material love, which is beautiful.
Hmm.
But there's melancholy in the song. Like there's a bit when you said, "If this is an amazing line. I live my life in darkness, but make the dark my own." I hope I said that right. That's melancholy, but at the same time poetic. Is that something that, if you don't mind me asking, is that part of
Yeah,
songs art for you?
yeah, definitely. I think it's like a contrast kind of thing. Like love songs that kind of start here with joy and then just kind of go up here to love.
Yeah.
It's nice, but to me, it's much more powerful when you know that like this love is not just love; it's like rescuing you from despair. And when you put that bigger picture in there, it kind of makes the message more potent for me.
Interesting idea. Yeah,
Hmm.
very interesting idea. My favorite song on the album is "The Difference." I really like that. "The Light is Ours
Thank
to
you.
Share." That's really cool. That's a really wonderful song. I wouldn't mind if you don't mind just going a little bit back on the first record
Hmm.
and the journey from making that record to making this one. You said there was a kind of an effort of thinking about doing something that was specifically you, but at the core of
Hmm.
both of those records, like I said, the guitar, the voice, and the songs feel really central to what you're doing. How do you judge that kind of journey? I mean, you talked a bit about wanting to do something completely different, but
Hmm.
was it a conscious decision to do that? You sort of said, "I'm going to do something different," or
Yeah, it was because I knew that in the first album I was like writing songs. I wasn't thinking that much about it being me. It was just like, okay, this is a song, and it's it's a good song, bad song, whatever. And then as I had to play them, every night for weeks at a time for 2 or 3 years, I started to feel like it's hard to like look somebody in the face and sing a song that is not really me. And there were some songs on that album that I felt like, I can sing here and I'm singing these songs. I feel like a fraud, like I'm lying to these people. And
wow,
that was the thing that stayed in my mind when I was sitting down to write the next album. I'm like, I have to be able to just tell this story, like even if it's not literally my own experience, like I have to be really comfortable in the way that I'm telling it. And that it started with the songwriting, and then when I went to the production side, it was the same thing. Like I love the traditional blues, I really do, but I grew up in the 90s, 2000s. I love electronic music, I love drum machines, I love
yeah.
all that stuff. So it all just making honesty the main objective kind of shifted the direction of the sound.
Could you tell us a bit about some of the technology and there's bits I read and didn't fully understand. I got hold my hands up about the 808. Is that right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
samplers and stuff. Could you talk a bit about that on the Fatalist? You use specific equipment, and could you talk a bit about that?
yeah. So the Roland 808 drum machine, I think it's Roland. Um, but the 808 drum machine is like the one of the like foundational sounds of hip hop from the 80s. And throughout the history of hip hop, has become that sound, that big bass and the hi hats that you hear in
Yeah.
trap music specifically, and in southern rap. That's the 808 sound, and I use those specific sounds, and I use analog drum machines too, so I like modify them to my own taste. But it was really important to me to have that, like, because I still feel like there needs to be like a certain organic quality to the music. I didn't want it to be like overly electronic, but to me, a the 808 to me just feels like a natural thing. Just I guess because of how much I've been exposed to it. Um, and then sampling too was one of those things that started pointing me in this direction. Was taking old blues records, like vinyl records from my collection, and sampling them and like making new songs out of it. That felt like very much like a full circle thing for me. So like on "You're Gonna Need Somebody on Your Bond," I took a Charlie Patton song, and I was like, this feels like it feels like the blues. It feels like hip hop, and it's just so natural to bring these things together.
Was that with the voice coming in? If I remember rightly, was that the song? That was amazing. Yeah, I was going to ask about
Hmm.
that. And you just took that off a Charlie Patton record, and
Yeah, and I just chopped it up in the sampler, put some effects on it, and
did the
yeah.
song start with that sample, or did you have the song and patch them together? How did it work?
Well, that song is a traditional blues
Oh,
song,
yeah.
and I'd been playing it just in the regular like acoustic way, and then I just started messing around, adding drums, and then the samples came toward the end, like the finishing touch.
Have you always done sampling before you sort of started with? Was that your first musical kind of port of call, or was guitar and vocals? What came first?
Yeah, the guitar came first, but it wasn't long. Maybe I think I was like 11 or 12 when I started playing guitar. And then by the time I was like 16, I was using samplers and I had turntables and doing the DJ thing. So,
Wow.
at this point, it's like almost equal amount of time.
And on this record, I mean, this is one thing I didn't see. With who played? Do you play nearly everything on this record? Is it pretty much you?
Yeah, I have my friend Jesp who plays violin, but I do all the drums and the bass and the guitar and some mandolin on there.
Cool. And where was it recorded?
I recorded it at home in Milwaukee.
Because you were in Austin before, is this correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Could you talk a little bit about how I've asked a few artists on this show about how where you're at geographically
Hmm.
impacts on the work? I mean, did moving back to Milwaukee have a big impact on the songs, on the recording?
Yeah. I mean, even some of the songs, like I started writing them while I was in Texas. And, Long Journey Home, for example, is very much like inspired by the desert. So there's some of that in there. Um, but then moving back home, like Milwaukee is a very like, gritty industrial city with, its fair share of problems. And all of that kind of starts to get back into my head and I get stressed out and I write these kind of anxious
Yeah.
songs, so they're both in there.
It's quite a spiritual. A lot of what you do is quite spiritual. Is that a big influence? The kind of gospel sounds as well. On would you say on what you do? The gospel music. Would you say that'd be fair? Or
It is in a way of like it's just like gospel music is just like the language of black people in so many ways, just like the way that it's sang and the way that people express themselves. The message itself, not necessarily. I didn't grow up in a religious household or anything. I played music in the church, but I didn't attend on my own volition. So the energy of it is there, but not trying to push an agenda or anything.
that's. I mean, it's interesting. You talked early on about the early blues being a key, and a guy who I straightway came to when I heard you was Skip James. I
Oh,
mean, who
yeah.
I love. I'm sure you do too.
Hmm.
And what I find sort of similarities is that thing, the guitar and the vocal. There's a kind of cool and responding on, and it's so interlinked. Is that very much how you? I mean, you've already said you use samplers, but with recording the guitar and the vocals, I mean,
Hmm.
technically, do you? It must be difficult if you record them separate because yours are so intertwined. Do you record live or do you record separate or both? Or
Yeah, I almost always record together unless I'm like trying to get a specific sound. But even when I play them separately, I have this like link because the way that I play is the same way that I sing, so
yeah,
it's pretty easy for me to follow along. But yeah, Skip James and is a big one for me because it's just to me the blues is all about the vocalist and the instrument is just like to accompany it, and which is the crazy thing about the blues is because uh, there's a big amount of people who feel the opposite, that it's all about guitar
yeah.
and you don't really have to be able to sing or you don't have to sing at all. And there's definitely the blues has grown so much that there's room for everything. But for me, when I really connect with it, it's like I want to hear the singer and I want to hear the guitar like playing along with the singer, not taking over too much.
And the songs too. I mean, you're great. You've got great songs. Skip James was a great songwriter as well. For me,
Yeah.
that's the blues I like is the songs when there's great songs to hear.
Yeah, it's a lot the songs are so important and people get caught up uh in the folklore of it, because so many people sing the same songs and that's an important part of it. But at the same time, all of our favorite Delta blues and old blues artists, Skip James, Son House, Muddy Waters, they were all trying to be individuals. They didn't want to sound like anybody else. They all shared the same repertoire in some ways, but the most important thing was to tell your own story, and that's what I'm focused on too.
Could we talk a little bit about kind of musical beginnings? We talked a little bit about that already, but early musical memories. What was your first musical memory?
The first, there were a lot of them. I can't pinpoint which one was first, but my older brother had a big stereo system, so he'd play like Tupac and E40 and Jay-Z CDs really loud in the house. I remember that. I remember the radio, and the radio when I was really young was like the era of boy bands and pop music, uh, and then my mom always listened to like Motown and smooth jazz. I remember like a lot of Kenny G and Dave Koz and that kind of stuff. but also yeah, Jackson 5. So there was a lot going on in my very early days, and then once I started picking up the guitar, it was all about punk rock and heavy metal, and
Wow,
it's kind of went
that's
everywhere
kind of
from
a
there.
jump. But you're very much acoustic now, although you're using electronic instruments. You've mentioned punk rock, the Clash, and stuff a few times. Is that something you could come back to, or you think it's in there too? I guess it all connects.
Yeah, it's in there. I just spent so much time uh, exploring music that I don't really have a desire to go back to the like very simple ways of playing punk music. But I do love like the more. That's when I started getting into post-hardcore and like, uh, and then it just evolved. It's like when you have punk and you make the guitar more complex, eventually it becomes metal. So it's all like mixed up in my head, and it's all the same to me. But I still listen to it. Yeah.
Cool. Um, Talked a bit about guitar playing, and I wanted to ask a little bit about. It's very much, correct me wrong, if I'm wrong. Fingerstyle guitar seems when I've seen videos of you, that's very much the way you play. Is that mainly the style you would adopt? Fingerstyle guitar, splits a slide, and alternative tunings. Is that when you play live? Is that very much the your main kind of way of playing?
When I play live, it's really a different experience.
Okay.
I do dedicate like a certain portion of my set to finger style, acoustic slide, and stuff like that. But I do bluegrass flat picking. I play electric guitar. I play,
Oh,
standard tuning. I do pretty much everything.
I didn't know that. I've only seen a couple of videos of the live stuff. I mean, how do you kind of bring those all together? Is it and how does that impact on the way you record? I mean, is it very? Do you think it's very different, or how would you describe that?
It is very different. I mean, even as soon as the first album came out, I was like, okay, I have a problem because you know there's a it's gonna be as this acoustic blues guitar player, but I've never been just that. And even as soon as I started playing the songs live, I was like, okay, what can I do? I started adding effects and playing them in different ways and different styles.
Mm.
But whenever I record, I always have to kind of, and this is something that I'm trying to get past. But right now, when I record, I feel like I have to kind of pull it back a little bit because when I'm live, I can just play whatever I want, and it's all about the experience. And people have no choice but to be patient because they paid and they're gonna just have to sit there till the end and see where I'm going. But it's harder to ask that much patience of people on record because they hear 5 seconds, they don't like it, they move on.
Mm.
So I'm still trying to figure out how to like 100% be myself on record. I still find myself trying to like make something that's like commercial in a small sense. Not like I'm trying to write pop hits or anything, but trying to just make something that people can understand.
You talked about earlier on about a moment when you were playing the Buffalo Nichols record maybe 2 3 years ago, and you suddenly thought, "Hang on, these songs aren't me anymore." But when you wrote those songs at the time, they very much were you. There's a great track on the
Uh
first album that I'm going to mention. Sorry, because I listened to this for ages on repeat, so you're going to have to bear with me.
Please.
Sorry, it
Yeah.
was you. That is a great track. What a
Yeah,
track.
yeah. That was one of those songs that I didn't think much about. I wrote it and I don't think I've ever played it live actually.
So funky. It's just great. The riff going on. It's just a great groove. I was just listening. It's this 3 minute song as well. Like you talk about pop song. I don't know. That should be a pop song. I think. If I was in charge,
Yeah.
that'd be a pop song. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a song that I just never really felt like I understand where I was at when I wrote the lyrics. It's definitely something that was real to me at the time. But then I moved on from the. I think I was in this headspace of like, what is a blues song supposed to contain? And now I just am making a conscious effort to be different, which is not a good thing. Sometimes trying to be different is stupid. But I'm trying to explore other ideas within the blues music, and that one is kind of like a thing that has been done before.
It's very much
Even
your
though I did,
song. Very much
yeah,
your
yeah.
sound. I thought when you heard it, that's really you. I I've
I'm
not heard
definitely not
that.
ashamed of the song. I'm proud of that song
Yeah.
definitely, but I think my main thing was like, okay, I did this. Now I got to do what's next. And the more I like just, and this makes no sense as an artist. Like I feel like the more I play those old songs, the more they're gonna stay with me. I feel like I gotta
Yeah.
psychologically prepare for the next thing.
And are you were already playing the songs from the Fatalist in the run up to recording them? Is that the process by which you record, playing them live loads and loads and loads, and then getting? Is that how it works, or do you hold things back until you go in the studio?
Yeah, for me, it's I usually don't play songs that I plan to record or release.
Oh wow.
I have a lot of songs that I play live that are my own songs that I've never recorded, that I never planned to record, just because I really like the idea of a live experience being something unique.
Wow.
But I always record the songs and then I play them, and I feel like they really become the songs that they're supposed to be live. After like a year of playing them is when I feel like the song is done. So maybe I should like do a live album or something.
Yeah, definitely. If there's songs that no
Yeah.
one's ever heard, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
How are you gonna? How do you? Because you talked about the sampling and stuff. Is there any way you can find of bringing that in live, or is that just do you use loops or?
Yeah, when I play live, I have a sampler on stage that I play, and I have a drum machine, and I
Oh
incorporate all those sounds into my live set.
wow! It's the one thing I haven't checked out of what you do. I must do that. I must do that for sure.
Yeah.
So this series of interviews has interviewed a bunch of great artists like yourself, and the reason I started doing it is because I'm a songwriter myself, and I want to kind of just ask artists like how do you the question I've asked every interviewee is how do you work? What is the process by which you work? Do you have a set routine every day? Do you wake up and you're like, right, I gotta write this amount, or how does it work? Is it? I'd love to know how do you write? How do you make songs?
Yeah, I would love to know as well. Um, this this last album, I was on like a schedule for the first time, really, where I had like you got one month to finish the record. So I would just wake up every day at like 5 in the morning and just work and work and work, and that got me nowhere because I've never written like that. I've always just kind of just let the songs come to me. Um, and I think I wrote maybe two songs just off of trying to have this routine. Um, but normally it just comes, and that's I can work kind of slow in that way. Like I'll just a line or a melody or something will come to me, and I just will just it'll just come to me, and then the song is like 60, 70% done. And then sometimes it can take a day or a year to finish the rest of it. But I mean, the short answer to that is I haven't found my own process. Every song comes in a different way. Sometimes I write the lyrics first and I try to put music to it. Sometimes the music comes and I'm just like finding a melody and the words come. I haven't found a pattern to follow.
That's a good response. A lot of musicians have said the same thing. No one's really said they wake up and they have a specific way of working. Um,
Hmm.
when you said you woke up at 5 o'clock and worked every day, I have this idea of drum machines pumping really loud wherever you're living. Your neighbors must be good people.
Always headphones. That was the great thing about
Okay,
using the electronic instruments, is that I could always, do it all day without disturbing anybody.
that's cool. That's good. That's clever headphones. I should remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, But you said because there's so many elements to what you do, like with the songs, guitar, vocals, drum machine, sampling. I mean, are there certain things you kind of have to? I'm trying to think of a description, but work on each part of that. You must have to practice a lot of that to make it work creatively.
Yeah, that's the thing that I didn't think about beforehand is now that I have created this sound or this even like a live set that revolves around all these parts, it's just like, okay, I got to practice guitar. I got to make sure all my guitar strings are changed. I got to learn how to program these drum machines. I got to make sure that the songs are programmed in there. There's just so much to do, and it's it's been really exciting because it's my brain is working in a different way.
Yeah.
But I just for so long I was just like all about acoustic instruments. I could
Right.
just practice all day and learn 100 songs, and now it's like maybe I actually practice guitar an hour every month or two, and it's very different. But I'm more interested in the song now than the guitar playing. So it's good at this point in my life to find a new thing to be interested in.
That's a great answer. So I'm getting towards the end. Is there anything? So what's coming up for Buffalo Nichols in the next few months?
I've got a lot of touring. I'm gonna go everywhere, almost everywhere on this album. I'll be in the UK in February.
Great.
Right.
How do you
Sometime
find the
around
UK? Did you survive the weather and the funny
there.
accents?
I've never been.
Never been. Oh
Never
wow.
been.
Wrap
So
up
this will
warm,
be
man. We have cold weather. Mind you, is where you at now? Is it cold?
Milwaukee. It gets real cold. A lot of snow.
You'll be ready.
It's bad. Yeah.
You'll be
But
ready.
yeah, I'm just gonna be touring, and I feel like I've got something that's a little bit my record that's a little bit unconventional. So I think I have to go through the traditional routes to get it to people, which means I got to tour. I gotta get in people's faces, and I'm ready to do that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Buffalo Nichols. It's been a real pleasure, man, and it's a wonderful record.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Have a nice day, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you
Goodness.
too.